Hello and welcome to our next session in our ongoing Ars Magica saga. We're now in the midwinter of 1197, so we're a few months after the last session, and some of the Magi are meeting up to discuss their wishes, desires, hopes for their new covenant. So earlier today, two of the now ex-apprentices finally finished their apprenticeship. They passed the so-called gauntlet and swore their oath. In fact, in the case of some of them, their recent expedition was deemed sufficient to count as a gauntlet. But that aside, the resident Mag of the Covenant are currently off in the annual recasting of the Aegis the Hearth ritual. So this is the one chance that these now guest Magi have to actually discuss privately among themselves. So they found a appropriate room in the Covenant to sit and talk over the ample food which is going around for the midwinter feast. Do you want to introduce yourselves and start?
All right. I'm John. I'm playing Micah of House Flambeau, a rather lean man, now in his mid-20s, kind of unassuming, usually has books around him, quite distracted at the moment. He's also he's managed to grab food before the feast starts, and he's got a plate of food in front of him.
Lee?
Yes, I'm Lee. I'm playing Eye of House Verdita. He is currently sitting at the table, fidgeting quite a bit, looking quite anxious. He is tall and thin, and what you could say, pretty or handsome.
And I am Solon. I am playing Lucius, formerly known as Gareth, of House Xmisk. He's also in his mid-20s at this point, looking pretty decent for it. For reasons unknown to the party, he may not age at the normal rate. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Cool. I assume we've gathered around a nice fire somewhere. As it's midwinter.
It is, though. Curiously, the Covenant does keep quite warm. It doesn't take very much magic to generate heat, and you do have a resident Vitius, so the house is, by Middle Ages standards, extremely comfortable.
Okay. All right. Congratulations, both of you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So, your parents give you any final last words of wisdom?
Oh, you know, I'm a chronic disappointment. I'll probably be horrible. But good job, paradoxical as that is.
Good pep talk.
Yes, she didn't really say too much about it.
Oh well.
So I figure it's a good time to talk about our future now.
Yeah, there's only Arminius left as an apprentice, so to be honest, there's enough of us now to start laying the groundwork at any new covenant we need to found.
Yes, I'm quite anxious to finally leave my own lab.
And the sooner we can get out from the more I am exposed to the. You know, I don't have an issue with politics. I really don't. But there's politics and then there's feuding. I'm not eager to get caught up in the feud of our parents.
Yeah, I don't want to be just sorted down as a annoyance by their enemies. I'll give you that much.
I mean, let us face facts. We have interacted with Blackthorn twice now, and both times we have reported the instance properly to our superiors, but They were rude and standoffish, but they did not harm us or even impede us in the line of our duties. In fact, we have no evidence of any wrongdoing on their part at all.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I would say they are giving us a chance to decide for ourselves what we wish to do, rather than simply label us.
I don't know, but I'm anxious to get away as well. I've spent 2 years now sharing my home with Talbot. That's enough for anyone.
Dear God, how are you not insane?
I have books.
Good point. He doesn't use them for fire, despite the rumors about Flambeau.
Michael would give you a very scorching look here because he's a Flambeau.
I know. Yes, but you read.
Yeah.
Anyways. So, you may remember we've discussed many possibilities over the years. Done some research on a few different locations. The only locations that have been forwarded so far have all been within striking distance of here. Or, what would you say, within a week's travel or thereabouts?
No. They're much further from Voluntas, but they're, as a crow flies, 2 of them are very close to Blackthorn, as the crow flies. Sherwood may be a week's travel south, maybe a bit further. It's south of York, Sherwood. And Dover,
Sherwood, though, at least is a little isolated.
It's isolated, yeah. And then Dover is obviously at the southern end of the country, so that's south of London. So it took us.
Isn't that where there's a whopping big castle?
Yes, all right. Yeah, Dover is, well, it's the closest point to the continent, so it is well fortified by the king and the
Also,
nobility.
I think Canterbury is also close by. I don't know.
Yes, it is. Yes. Close enough. Well, too close.
I'd prefer to avoid that particular location, at the very least. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I'm personally leaning between Sherwood and Wookiee myself, from what I've been looking into them.
Okay. The Wookiee Hole, I don't know that much that end of the country that well. I haven't been doing that much research. I've been copying books mostly for us.
Yeah.
But
yes.
Being in a waterlogged cave system is going to play merry hell with parchment, with vellum. Maintaining a library is going to consume a lot of hermetic time to maintain any books we have in good condition against that.
Yes.
And let alone, I don't know about obviously the legends of the witch. If there is such an individual still living in the caves that we may have to evict or come to an agreement with, but that has its own complexities.
Not dissimilar from the rumors of bandits in Sherwood's Forest. We would have to work with that.
Yeah,
bandits I think
is
are a bit
simple.
easier than a witch. Yes.
Yes, I agree.
Even Talbot won't begrudge us just taking the direct approach with the bandits, I doubt.
Well,
And isn't there one other location in Cornwall, I think?
It's Tintagel. They're the legends of Arthur and Merlin. The Fae, which I have no offense to review, but I have no inclination to get involved in any sort of Fae machinations.
well, there are unfortunately rumors of Fey machinations in Sherwood as well.
It doesn't surprise me. It's a forest. That's it's
Yeah.
what
Most
they're-
forests have some sort of fair folk
Places of nature.
Hmm.
But we are all agreed let's go through the locations one by one and our first impressions as to yay or nay. Your first impression of Tintagel is no. Mine would be to say I don't really care, but it sounds like there might be some competition up that way. So I would also say nay.
Yeah.
Ambivalent, leaning towards no. And you.
Yeah. I'm not really that interested in Cornwall, but
out of character, I need your character's name pronunciation.
Pride your eye.
Thank you.
It will
I
be
may have to
shortened
ask
to
that a couple
Pry.
times.
Yeah.
Hey,
That's
Pry. Okay. All right. So let's discount that one for the moment. No Cornwall. Wookiee Hole. Pry here is thinking possibly. You're saying no because of the possible witch and the waterlogged nature.
Dampness.
The waterlogged nature, and it's the closest site to Blackthorn. There's also very, very close to Glastonbury.
That's 4 reasons. I'm with you on that one. Then I like caves. I do not like wet caves.
I would love to go and explore, and the idea of transforming that cave system into a structured, masoned underground castle, fantastic. But it's going to take me decades to learn those skills necessary to that, and existing in the interim, not.
We would have to live outside the caves. Also, yes, I would agree. Also, it's going to be. I don't wish to. Well, it sounds like we're all discounting that one for the moment.
Yeah. I don't really like the idea of wet books either.
All right, so we've taken out. We've taken out Cornwall. We've taken out Wookiee Hole. That leaves Dover and
Sherwood.
Sherwood, yes. Now Dover, opinions.
I think we all agree that that's a bad idea, but I do like
beautiful countryside from what I hear, but
I hear it has quite a strong aura, but I just don't think I would want to be that close to.
I don't know where the aura is. Yeah, I don't know where the site is relative to the castle, but obviously, any castle can project its power quite a way. So you're between that, you've got Canterbury up the road, and it's less than a week's travel to London, which has its pros and cons. Being near a city.
We would be surrounded.
But
we would be surrounded by potential threats.
Now, okay,
yes.
we're quite fortunate. We do have the gentle gift, quite a number of us, and
2 of us do.
And Pry doesn't upset animals, at least. So but it does.
How large is Nottingham? I've never been there.
I've never travelled further. No, I've not travelled much further south than York, apart from when we went to London. Conrad would know, as he was a Royal Forest. He was that's where he was escaped from. That's where Arminius's father came from.
Ah, yes. Okay.
So, which I don't know if whether Arminius has any knowledge of Nottingham, I don't know. I've never spoken to him about it.
Yeah, I don't know.
It sounds so far as if Sherwood is, if not ideal, it is the least of our possible evils of the sites suggested to us.
Yeah, it's it is a royal forest. That's the only. So they actually settling there, we could be considered bandits ourselves.
That's one thing I was concerned about.
But
could always make our home. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm not too concerned about it because, Mentem magics. But you're in a forest anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It might be doable, or we may even be able to negotiate something with the sheriff of Nottingham. I think that he would control the royal forest. I think.
I assume if we go there, we might not want to be taking Conrad.
Yeah, I don't know if that was even ever an option anyway, to be honest.
Well, I know
also...
my mother was talking about potentially. But,
okay. That's interesting to know.
But yeah, I doubt it would be a good idea.
Well, it would be easier to try and bring my wife to a forest and living in a somewhat isolated location than it would be to taking her to live in caves. But
Also, Sherwood is probably the most distant from Blackthorn, and we're kind of close to Voluntas, which we then would still have support. And going south, your next covenants are Blackthorn and like Labellus, which is near, and the Scholar Praglaranis near sort of Cambridge. So we have space to grow, and it is.
Speaking of, sorry, go ahead.
No. I'm just saying there's not covenants immediately close by.
Speaking of room to grow, however, you may recall that we have discussed, with varying results, other more far afield locations.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I remember you were discussing Ireland at one point, or someone was discussing Ireland as a possibility. It would put us far afield. It's civilized enough. And there are plenty of regions along the coast that might be suitable, I suppose.
I don't know how many Hermetics are already in Ireland. Must admit.
I assume there are some.
Well, it's a full tribunal.
Then it shouldn't be an issue. But there's also other possibilities.
What do you have in mind?
You may recall a possibility that was raised some years ago. Scandinavia.
I remember.
I did only preliminary research at the time, as it seemed interest was directed elsewhere. But on further consideration, I have thought of several strong reasons to do it, but I would need to hear your reasons for not wanting to do it first. Because I have the impression you would be somewhat opposed to it as is. There are many reasons, I'm sure, but...
Matthias, strangely enough, spoke to me about this not 2 weeks ago and cautioned against it for our group as a whole, as he doesn't think we are combat ready. If it would, we would effectively be invaders into a foreign land to a lesser or greater extent, and we have a great deal of inexperience with combat magics, and without magics, we're even less experienced, less well suited. So that is I think he has a valid point.
That is entirely valid. However, that would mostly apply if we were trying to move further northwards in a region that is not well developed. Because then we would have to deal with the local... There'd be local threats. Banditry is not altogether uncommon from what I understand, but there are quite a few locations, I believe, which would be considered fairly temperate along the southeastern coast, along the sea. And they are somewhat more civilized. The church holds some sway there. But there's still plenty of room to develop. We would not be facing constant banditry attacks there.
Being near the sea, we always said that would have been useful.
Indeed. Preferable to being in a forest, in fact.
And I can certainly I can probably speak to my sister. At least they would include us in potential supply runs or anything. They may be able to help us get any supplies we need.
I could possibly resume contact with my father and discuss the possibility of merchant contacts along that way. He may know someone. He is connected to his own guild. I am not guaranteeing anything, but it is a possibility. Let's see what else.
We would need to search out an actual magical site for Covenant ourselves. I think that would be
Of course.
probably the biggest challenge.
Of course, the Red Cap network does extend far, however, even into regions where the Hermetics do not have much sway. I believe it was established the nearest Covenant to that location would be in Denmark, or it would be the land of the Danes. So
I know in my research for Covenants, there is a Covenant in the Rhine that was founded with the purpose of exploring Scandinavia, but it's a city Covenant that's full of traders and the like.
Someone to be good, and we would have common cause with them at least.
Well, it might. Okay, if we were to choose to go to Scandinavia, I imagine our hospitality right here will very quickly come to an end.
Yes.
One of the things we could do is perhaps, if we can get a letter of introduction, maybe seek hospitality in this Covenant in the Rhine, and from there use it as a base to at least find a site. Or the Covenant in Denmark, but I don't know about that so much.
That would actually be quite rational if we could get that letter of introduction.
The Covenant.
I don't know if Ardith would be willing to do that, but I could ask.
No, I'm more thinking the Covenant is full of traders, maritime. Say they
yes,
they're sailor traders. Why not the leader of the Northern Winds who took us south a few years ago to London? I spent a few evenings conversing with him about the wider order. We could see if he could introduce us. Hell, we could even ask one of the boats from the Northern Winds maybe to take us to the Covenant.
That would be entirely possible. As you say, if we were to embark on this, it would be a somewhat momentous decision. There would be very little support from here. Keeping it entirely between the three of us and the wall, I do not believe that we could ask, but I don't believe we would get any support beyond the books you have already copied, and that's really it. I doubt the only grogs I could even think to take with us would be my wife, which the next person who calls her a grog other than me is going to have trouble. And possibly her parents, though I believe they are well settled here and would likely not wish to leave. But I could maintain contact with them at least.
Yeah.
I do not think we would be able to take much with us. It would be very bare bones. What we would take is the one thing that cannot be taken away from us, the product of our 15-year apprenticeship, the knowledge of magic that we currently have, which is not insignificant. We are still beginners on the path of magic, but we know more than someone that is a first-year apprentice.
I bloody hope so after 15 years.
Yes, that's the entire point. But are there any other concrete reasons? Because if we are to even consider it, I would like to be able to say those reasons were addressed.
Yeah.
Combat is less of an issue, hopefully.
I have no idea. Again, there's a legendary Order of Odin. If that even exists, I have no idea.
And
if it's
since
actually
they
real.
we do not know if they exist, but even presuming that they do, we do not know how much of Scandinavia falls under their sway. We are, again, not moving into the northern, less settled parts. We would be moving southeast, somewhere where there is somewhat more civilization.
Are they
and which would
Christian
put us in
lands?
good access for... Yes, from what I understand, all but possibly the most remote areas of the north are Christianized. The last I had heard, there was a civil war of sorts being fought, but it is not something that is... The way it was explained to me is the war is not as comprehensive as it might be down here. It consists of, during the summers, a couple armies move along the main roads, which we would not be living on. They batter at each other's fortresses. Perhaps they send a fleet back and forth. And that is it. But both sides of this war are Christian. It is simply a matter of one prospective ruler is backed by the Pope and one is not. That is as much as it was explained. We would be moving into a segment of land likely controlled by the faction supported by the Pope, but it makes little difference because where we are going, we would not be directly involved.
How is
Essentially,
how is land owned in Scandinavia? Because in England, obviously, the king owns all the land. So, any covenant that's created suffers difficulties when the king's men come and demand, "Who are you? Why have you made your homes here?" How does it work in Scandinavia? Do you know?
that is a very good question. Of course, if we are located remotely enough and not maintaining a public presence, as is done here, that would be less of an issue.
Because
Let me see.
There's also the issue of the language barrier. Which...
Let's see. Actually, out of character, from what I'm seeing here, I don't think my character would have enough lore to know this, but apparently during the Viking Age, farmers owned their own land. The Jarls that they worked for did not own the land, per se. It was all owned by the farmers.
Yep.
But by 1300, a century by now, more than half of the land was owned by the king. But it was still a good... Well, sorry, the king, the church, and the aristocracy controlled a total of about half the land.
Yeah, so basically they're transitioning into a European
yes,
feudal.
but right now we would probably be okay. But again, my character doesn't know this, so continue. That was just out of character. In character, we have to actually look it up and talk to someone who's been there.
All right. Okay, the next complication will be that technically the lands of Scandinavia fall within the Novgorod Tribunal, not the Rhine. They technically do fall in another tribunal's land, and there are a few covenants in Novgorod that are even documented. I wouldn't even know where that tribunal meets or where you'd have to go to even discuss the potential of settling there, unless we just settle without giving notice to the tribunal.
That is something we would have to discuss with the Red Caps. They would be the most well-informed as to who is in a position to even discuss that. However, that covenant that you mentioned in the Rhine that was founded to open the gateway into Scandinavia, they would definitely have already done their research on that topic.
Yeah, agreed.
They would know exactly who to speak with.
I agree. They should hopefully know, but we will have to then, if that gets pushed back at us by Voluntas, therefore we have considered it at least.
Yes, I do not expect Voluntas as a whole to offer us any support in this, however. The best we can hope for is a lack of opposition in some cases.
Well, to be honest, it doesn't actually matter if they oppose us, because we are free to choose where we settle as full Magi. Their voting will dictate how much support we get from them.
Exactly, and the worst case scenario is no support other than the books that you have already copied, which are your books, I assume, at this point.
No, they're not. That's not how book trading and the order works. They are still owned by Voluntas. They would then just choose to gift us to them later, because I was doing it as a season of work for the hospitality they have shown me since I've passed my gauntlet. So
in that case,
I wouldn't. Yeah.
In that case, they could even refuse that. So
yes.
We might. Worst case scenario, then we could be faced, if we were to embark on this possibility, we would be faced with the possibility of no support.
Yeah. Now, the one trump card I can play is my grandparents, Philippus. He is a protector of Dunmar. Dunmar, or how you pronounce the Bonsagus. Dominus Magnus. I know that he is very gung-ho about going into Scandinavia, but he sees it as a conquest, as a military action, shall we say, not one of simple settlement.
perhaps that is a person I would love to have this conversation with, of course, but perhaps it could be argued that before an invasion is to occur, proper reconnaissance should be performed.
But it's the only card I can pull from my lineage that we may garner a little bit of support from, if I can even get a letter to him.
I believe that I would be able to stay in contact at least with Ardith and make arrangements with her as an individual. But she, at the rate she travels, she might even visit us at some point. It's hard to say.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Matthias would support me in contacting his parent, his mentor. That's all. If we chose to go to Scandinavia.
Then that is a trump card he could pull, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
it's a possibility, however. I believe there is more potential to going into Scandinavia than there is in Sherwood. Sherwood is the least of possible evils, the best site among those that have been placed before us. But it's still, we would be close enough to our parents here to be drawn into their conflict, no question.
Agreed.
We would be close enough to them that some would see us in tribunal as simply an accessory to them, especially with our relative newness, shall we say.
Oh, no,
freshly,
certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. We're a little more than a chapter house, to be honest.
Exactly. And that's apart from the fact that we would be in a naturally isolated location where trade would be difficult. Unless you plan on building a road through the forest, which defeats the entire purpose. In which case it becomes very difficult for us to get things sent to us until such point as portals could be erected, and that is quite a undertaking. That is not going to happen for some time. That would be a high priority if we were to settle in Norway, for that matter. But at least in that case, at least in Norway, we would have access to the ocean and sea trade. But you've been somewhat quiet, Pry. Any thoughts?
Well, I don't know. I'm just a little bit concerned about going so much against my parents' wishes. She seems to think, like, as your two also seem to think that it is going to be very dangerous. I understand that we're going to be in the south, but still, like, foreign land.
Oh, indeed. There will be some challenges. I have no doubt of that. The language being one.
Yeah.
But, what am I saying? That could be solved with Menta. He's joking. He's joking.
If only linguistic problems could be.
But in all seriousness, though, I believe I am facing the least amount of opposition in this, namely that Ardith, she is not pleased by the possibility, but she will not oppose it. She does not want to limit our possibilities, in her words.
I don't honestly. Me and Matthias haven't discussed what he will and won't vote for. So
let us assume for the moment that if we were to raise Norway as a serious possibility, that we would be faced with a vote of no support, or at least that would be threatened.
I think we would have to make the assumption that we wouldn't get any support.
Yeah, the only place outside of England that my mother has said that she would support me with is Ireland. So.
I would prefer depending on what the specific locations were, I would prefer Ireland to here. But if we are going, the question is whether the rest of the Covenant would support it.
The problem with Ireland is, again, we don't have any idea of magical sites, so we would have to explore to find one.
Yeah.
But the problem
that puts it on an even footing with.
The consequence though is we don't know where the other covenants in Ireland are. Whereas in Norway, we
know there are none.
If we pick a magical site, there's no hermetic covenants at least which we should be impinging upon. Whereas Yeah. Whereas in Ireland, we could settle a magical site that's actually registered as someone's vistals, and suddenly, legally, then that gets very messy.
Yeah.
So in either case, for Ireland or Norway, we would need to have further research done. But it seems as if we have at least the possibility of either. In the case of Ireland, the only indication that it is even feasible is the support of
Facility, yes.
prize. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I don't know what the tribunal politics in Ireland are like, even if they how welcome of newcomers they are. Matthias warned me that even then, if we settle in Ireland, the locals, at least the people of Ireland, will consider us Norman invaders more than likely. So even that, we will be, unwelcome outsiders, regardless of where we go. If we leave Stonehenge.
Yeah.
The irony is, I doubt there are many Englishmen traveling to Scandinavia, so we would be seen more as a curiosity and less of an invading force.
Probably, actually.
So I believe the product of this conversation so far is, if possible, we should do more investigation to Ireland and see if there are any possible sites, or if we can get specific information as to which sites are claimed and so on and so forth. If we can find a unclaimed site that is vouched for, we could do that. In Norway, if we could find any sites along the southeastern coast, southern coast, etc., that would put us within good sailing distance. If there are any such sites, that would be a possibility. Plus, we have the possibility of our grandparents and the possibility of working with the covenant that you mentioned in the Rhine.
Yes.
There are a couple things in that direction. If neither of these work, if we find no information about Ireland, and you are unable to contact your grandparents, and we are not able to contact the Rhine or the boats that you spoke of, the Northern Winds, that was the name, and you are unable to contact them, and nothing turns up in that direction, then we are left with the options in England, and of those options, the least of possible evils is Sherwood.
Yeah.
Does that about sum it up?
That about sums it up, I think.
Well, then we will have to do some research and see what happens. I'll try and apply my own contacts, such as they are. I can contact my father, at the very least, and ask if he knows any contacts in either direction. He might know merchants who travel to Ireland. Very unlikely he knows any that travel to Scandinavia, but it's possible.
Yeah, well, I can get in touch with Alicia, at least, in the Northern Seas, see if her or Charles could introduce us to the Rhine Covenant that I've read about, if they've explored any of the coastline of Norway for magical sites. Because, to be honest, well, me and you, Lucius, are certainly not particularly well suited to exploring rugged coastlines. I don't know.
No.
Pry, if you're any. Might be a little better at it.
Yeah, I might be
We
a little
would
bit better,
likely need a. It would be difficult. We should not plan on simply hauling our butts up and down the coast of Norway searching for a magical site. That could take a very long time and be exceedingly dangerous to our health.
Yeah, but apart from the Northern Seas and maybe this Rhine Covenant, there's going to be not many other people we can ask if they know of them already. It's going to be it will be difficult, and we may well have to base ourselves out of the Rhine, out of the Danish Covenant, and then go on summer, when the weather's best as it can be.
No,
and
I have a question on that front.
Mm-hmm.
This is also an out of character question, because if my character should know this perfectly, then just shut me up. But as I understand it, there is a narrow window of time in which we, as full Magi, have before we claim or found or join a covenant.
No, you can be covenantless. That's fine. That's legal. You cannot be houseless.
Ah, okay. Then character should know that.
Yeah, Magi that don't have a covenant are called eremites. They're quite common. Actually, no. It's the Stonehenge has a really high proportion of eremites.
Just to clarify, yeah, there are some tribunals kind of weird rules about that sort of thing, so it can vary a little bit.
Yeah,
nothing in general.
But we're not going to be like executed on site or something.
Oh,
like, you do not have.
No. Stonehenge has plenty because a lot of ex-myths are eremites, and Stonehenge has a lot of ex-myths, so that's quite common. The Rhine has something different. It has a weird name, but basically, when you're young Magi for the first 10 or 20 years, you're not expected to live in a covenant. You're expected to travel around the Rhine to seek hospitality for a few years at a time at various covenants, and use their public side of their library, and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
That's perhaps culture.
Then perhaps it would not. So what you are saying is, worst case scenario, it is entirely possible that we could simply spend a year or so. I'm not sure what the term is, but we could essentially, if we are not able to make an immediate decision, we could in fact travel into the Rhine and speak to members of different covenants.
Yes. Now, there usually is a rent in the form of this that you have to pay. It depends on the covenants. I don't know what the books say historically. Tremore, which has a fantastic library in the Rhine. That's why I was reading about it. They had a very favourable. I think it was like 3 pawns of this for 2 to 3 years. And you could access their entire library. It wasn't just a public outer library. You could access it all.
That's excessively generous.
They were very proud of their library and seek to, make something of it. They're not. It's not obviously the great library of Dunmar, but outside of that, it's supposedly a very noteworthy library. I would like to visit it one day.
Okay, coming into the room is, assuming you're not trying to be super secret, is Gregory, who you will know. He's the librarian here, so I'm sure he would have probably taught you all Latin many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Is he one of the Grogs?
Yeah.
He's a companion because he's skilled.
Hello there, young lads. Enjoying the feast?
Yes, correct. Yes, Gregory. It's good to see you. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. I thought I know some of you have been talking about Ireland over the years, so I thought I'd spend some time and see what I could dig out of the library about it for you.
Oh, thank you very much, Gregory.
It doesn't take a genius to figure out why you are having this. Why you just happen to be chatting together. So,
was it that obvious?
Well,
he's grinning.
Well, a lot of people do talk to me around here, as you can imagine. And I do keep an eye on which books people have been consulted over the years.
And Gregory is also a very quiet man when he chooses to walk around the Covenant at times. I'll give him a smirk.
So, you looks over your faces. You probably aren't quite old enough, but Ireland was actually invaded back in what would be now 1170 by the English. But that pretty much sums up the history of Ireland. It's been invaded since before mankind arrived there. If you want to believe the old stories, invasion after invasion. So. But I suppose you want to hear about the Hermetic side of it. So, I mean, the Order got there. Well, it was quite early on. The founder Dene went to convert the Druids of Ireland, and massacred most of them. But eventually, there was a peace treaty. I found it's called the Treaty of. My Irish isn't very good. Ray, perhaps, not quite sure how they say it. Which the Order of Herbie signed a treaty, we say, with the native traditions and gave them the Kingdom of Connacht in Ireland. Ireland is 5 kingdoms. Do you know about this?
No, I have no knowledge of the lands of Ireland.
Ireland is like just as Britain is separated into England and Scotland and the many different princedoms and things of Wales. Ireland is split into 5 great kingdoms, which are originally ruled by different races. The Order of Hermes recognised that the native traditions would rule Connacht forever, and the Druids were gradually pushed aside. That was how peace was first eventually formed there. Let me see, what else did we find? So the Hermetics have been there for centuries, but it's always been on the fringe. No house has a Dominus Magnus in Ireland. So whilst there's been a bit of back and forth, it's always been on the periphery of Europe, mundanely and hermetically. So I gather there was they have, as you know, you might know about this. You might know about this. Scots have this tradition of cattle raiding.
Yes, I know. Yep.
Yeah. Well, the Irish have a similar customs. The way the Irish covenants seem to work is they have their covenants and some of their resources within a legally protected area, but then some of their holdings will be outside the area, so they're open to be raided.
Why don't they just keep all of their holdings within the protected areas then?
I'm not quite sure. You have to ask an Irishman.
I imagine it might be some sort of odd competition that they do with one another.
I know Normandy has some sort of raiding tradition as well.
It's more. I think it's more like you say it's cattle raided. They try not to kill each other.
Yes.
But they say the Irish do like to fight. Where are we? Yes. So Ireland's large. Ireland's whole. I couldn't make head or sense of it, but the legal texts of Ireland were complicated. They're quite different to the rest of the to Stonehenge anyway. Forgive me, I think I had a bit too much to drink today. Where were we? So anyway, so the English Magi started turning up around 1170, mainly Tremere, I think, from Stonehenge, who decided that the whole tribunal was just dangerous and archaic and at odds with good governance.
Hang on. You're telling me that a bunch of Tremere from Stonehenge, aka Blackthorn, went over to try and impose proper order on the Hermetics already in Ireland less than 30 years ago?
Yeah, that seems to be what I'm getting, what I can make sense of.
Oh my god!
We wouldn't just be seen as invaders by the locals; we'd be seen as invaders by the Hermetics.
But I mean, to be fair, the sort of bizarre things I read about Ireland, it sounds like it was actually pretty dangerous and archaic.
I know Matthias said it can be pretty rough over there still.
Anyway, so the resident Magi obviously referred to these as the English. And let's see. So that's been ongoing. Of course, the House Tremere have got their house behind them.
Yeah, the most well-organized house in the order. Yes, that's.
And they're not so keen on the Code in Ireland gives all sorts of protections and rights to hedge wizards. And of course, as you know, conservative Hermetics and House Tremere aren't particularly keen on that sort of thing. And they're not happy about the status of Cornet either. So yeah, we're now. So you have Irish Magi still raising up people in their own Irish Hermetic ways, and you've now got settling English Magi raising people in their customs.
I'll just look at Lucius. That's even worse than Voluntas and Blackthorn.
Oh, come now. I thought you wanted political tension. He's saying this with a sarcastic smirk.
Oh, there was another reference I found. They don't call House X Miscellanea there.
Mhm.
Oh?
They just call it the younger house.
Great, I've become everyone's kid brother.
So yeah,
Still, that's an
the
interesting
hermetic
way of
sources
referring to
are yeah, they keep talking about odd, backward, not much better than hedge wizards.
That sounds absurd.
Lots of discussion of Wizards War, Katamen, lots of Katamen. And they say grogs to raid each other's covenants.
Oh, wait, I thought they did that in Normandy.
I do.
But they tend to just, it's all seems to be about a certain dominance, not killing each other. Which is why they like.
Oh, that's so much more reassuring. I get the crap beaten out of me by a grog, and he just takes my research materials.
Well, as I say, it's not so reassuring for the grogs. But apparently they think this is good because if everyone if the threat of violence is real, it makes everyone friendly.
Odd thought.
Everyone's polite to their neighbours because of what could happen if they're not.
Yeah, that just seems bizarre.
There was also this weird thing about Magi at the end of their apprenticeships, though. I don't know if how this would work. So, at the end of the apprenticeship, before the oath is sworn, when the apprentice goes off for a year outside of the law, and they go and test themselves against fairies and fight mundades and raid other covenants for fun.
I will.
Wonderful.
I'm looking at Gregory, but I'm going to look back at Lucius. We're not combat ready. Going there sounds worse than going to the arse end of nowhere in Norway at the moment.
I mean, the arse end of Norway, we could at least lodge in a fishing village.
I think they call it what's the Irish word? McNamara. I think it means something like youthful exploits.
So, this would be opposed to how they handle things in the Rhine, then. The Rhine does not do things that way.
You're still a full member of the order. You don't get a go and break the law for a year pass.
Oh, that is reassuring.
Because these are Magi that have passed their gauntlets, then become progenitors or progenitors. It's weird. Dyslexia. Sorry.
Progenitors.
Thank
It's
you.
okay. I only know it because it's a convention name.
But this sounds awful, Jeffrey. You ever...
Well, as I said, I mean, this might not all be right. This is just what I was able to read and try to make sense of. I don't really have a head for like some of the ins and outs of it, but
It's very useful to know, though.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
oh, there was something about Wizards Wars. Let me see if I can remember what it was. Yes, they've decided that Wizards War have to be declared in person and before witnesses, but not necessarily directly to the target. So just like if you declared in public at a gathering.
And how many individuals counts as a gathering for that rule?
I didn't find it. It wasn't clear.
But you could completely blindside your enemies then. If you don't have to tell them directly. If your gathering amounts to friendly people that you go, by the way, I'm going to declare war on him, just don't you guys tell him. That's horrendous. That is not lawful.
Well, they've decided, each tribunal's got its own laws. They've decided that's how Wizard Wars work there. They also allow a person to Wizards War multiple people at the same time.
What? There's just like this dead flat what?
Yeah, Caleb is just shaking his head and just, hand on face.
So you piss off one war mage, and he can simply declare Wizard's War on our entire covenant, individually.
Sounds like it.
That's... no. I'm going to say no.
At this point, I support the Tremere that went over there. I wish them all the fucking best because they're either already dead or they're damn good at surviving, and I do hope they bloody rein in that madness.
I never thought I'd back the Tremere on something, but I suddenly do.
Apparently, oh yeah, so you know how in Stonehenge, if a Wizard's War is declared, it's a month in advance, and then it lasts a month, and then you have to at least wait another month before doing it again.
Yes.
Well, in Ireland, they don't require the break.
So you can just continuously besiege your enemies, basically.
In fact, the code assumes the war is extended until there's evidence it's not.
Wow. One declaration and you're just permanently at war until one of you kill each other.
I think you just described
Or
that.
both sides put evidence to say they've abated the war.
But it normally just seems to result in lots of raiding. And in fact, there was a Wizard War going on between two Irish Magi. The names I couldn't really pronounce. One was a Bjorn, I think. And it was going on for even though they'd actually met many times and chatted peacefully.
That makes Wizard War. That undermines the whole point of Wizard's War. If you're just we're permanently at war, but if we can be asked this month, yeah. If not, don't worry, I've got some lab work to do.
That part actually sounds a little civilized, but no. It's also not very orderly.
Yeah, I will just turn to you both and say, yeah, I'm vetoing Ireland as an option, by the way. That's a definite no from me. I don't know what you two feel, but...
Oh, they do Satamen a bit differently as well.
Oh, no. I am morbidly interested now.
You know how in Stonehenge there's the right to veto?
Yes.
They don't have that.
I've always been a little hazy. Why don't you explain that to me?
Basically, if I challenge you, I choose techniques, you choose forms. My first technique, you can veto it if you so choose, and I have to choose a second technique. And again, when you choose your form, I can veto that, and you have to choose a second form. So there's this whole thing that I may not be able to use my best art, or the first art that I chose, am I bluffing you, expecting the veto? So then my second choice, I can choose my best art. So that at this point, without the veto, you are always going to be using your strongest art in one aspect of it. So it's more blunt. There's less finesse to it. You're not trying to bluff your opponent or see if he will call a veto or not. There's none of that. There's none of trying to identify what your enemy's good at in a broad. It's just like, you have a reputation for being an Aurum mage. Well, I'm not going to choose Aurum against you, and that's all I need to. I'll just choose my best form instead of you. It's not a case of, I'll choose. It's yeah.
I understand.
I understand. It's blunt, basically. It's blunt and lacks finesse.
All right. So mission accomplished. We're not doing. There
was this strange bit about protection of magical and fairy creatures.
What now?
I am very nervous now.
Creatures who have the gift of speech in any tongue of man are considered like men and may be represented at tribunal.
What?
Means they count as mundanes, and obviously because mundanes can, in most tribunals, mundanes can lodge complaints with the order if they're aware of it. Obviously, most mundanes aren't, so doesn't come up that often. But magical fairy creatures that can speak, obviously. Yeah, so basically...
What if it is one of those birds that can imitate human speech?
I don't think. Who knows?
I
I don't intend to go there to study their laws to become an expert on it. Well, Gregory, it was thank you. It must have taken you quite some reading to actually get to the bottom of all that.
Well, I had a few years to try and poke around and read up on it.
Utter nonsense of a tribunal. Yeah, I'm certainly not keen to go there. Sherwood Forest is looking better than Ireland at this point, gentlemen.
I'm going to kind of share a pointed look at you and be like, yes, compared with those two, yes.
Yes.
There was I found this other reference. So apparently they have their tribunal meetings at the Hill of Tara. I don't know if you heard about it.
No.
The Hill of Tara is where the old Irish kings are crowned. So I think maybe possibly the Tuatha were once crowned there. It's got a lot of history. And there's a stone that cries out when the king goes round on his chariot. But I think the Scots have something similar, don't they? The stone of Scone.
I can't remember, to be honest.
Anyway, I was looking at that. I thought I'd try and look up the accounts of their tribunal meetings. There was talk for ambassadors to the tribunal, which that confused me because that's not normal, is it?
Ambassadors from where?
Well, so there was one of them who was named, I think it's pronounced Fohaid. It was spelled Fothaid. Who was the son of the king of the Third Bowl?
Aren't they some sort of fae? Or
I think so. One of the old other races of Ireland.
So yeah. they give votes at tribunal to non-hermetics, or at least gives them time to present cases. Yep. No.
There was some other ambassador from some other king, and something called the Eagle King, or King of the Eagles. Yes, and there was definitely a fairy being called Magi, I think. Some kind of like druid of the Tuatha, I think. Anyway, that's why I talk about Ireland for you. It's not a big land. You can walk across it in like 4 days. So not from west to east to west.
Assuming you don't get killed by someone.
As I said, there's 5 different. Well, I think they're now called provinces or kingdoms, or how I'm not quite sure. And of course, Quindilion came from Ulster. He's probably the most famous Hermetic Irishman.
The second Primus of House Maronita. Interesting.
Yes, my mother did say that he was Irish.
I never realised.
The books wrote his name differently, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Quindilion that's his Latinized name.
Okay.
So the actual name he used was an Irish. It had like 2 hyphens in it. Began with C, I think. I forget what it was, but it was some strange long Irish name like that. What was the other? I'm trying to remember if there's anything else of interest I found.
Honestly, Gregory, what you've given us is very interesting and certainly has helped clarify our decisions. So thank you.
No, you're welcome. Well, yeah, I know how it's spoken about you recent years, but I have watched you grow up from being young boys to the men you are today. So, yeah, I am somewhat fond of you all. Oh, that was it. That was the reference. There was this story about a meeting between Danae the Founder and Prelax.
Oh.
In 1806 on the shore in Ulster. Prelax was hunting the followers of Damhan Alada.
A spider. Yeah, I've heard those stories. I don't know the details of them.
So Prelax was anyway. That's why Prelax had gone to Ireland, and Danae went there to meet with her, and Danae bethought Prelax had come to help them. I'm not sure him or her for Danae. Anyway, help Danae kill the druids. And Prelax wanted to convince Danae to let her recruit all the druids to help fight the spider you called it without forcing them to join the order. And they had a falling out, which apparently it's talked about as an illegal wizards' war. But neither side pressed charges.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm guessing Parlax was kind of busy, waging a war against them to press charges, not D&D against the spider. But yeah, no, Ireland sounds like a silly place. Right, I'm going to find some more food. Gregory, would you like another drink?
Oh, yeah, yes, please.
I shall go and get us some. All right. Micah exits to get food and drink. At this point, I'm going to exit to get a drink. Back in a sec.
Well, he is. What was that?
Never mind. You were saying?
Yeah. I was going to say, well, he's gone. Wondering if you wanted to know some more information about your mother.
Oh, by all means.
Shall I leave you two lads to it, or
Yeah, I believe we're done with the ideas of Ireland, unless you have something else you wish to talk about.
Well, I'm happy to sit here and chat, but I just don't want to disturb your privacy if you want a private conversation. And that sounds like it might be one.
Given I don't know how embarrassing it is, probably a good idea. I appreciate you asking.
Well, is it yourself? Well, I'll leave you to your drinks then,
Yes.
young man.
Good
Thanks
eve.
for the information.
Enjoy the midwinter.
Yes. Ryder Eye gets out kind of like some notes and begins looking them over. It says, so yes, from what I've been able to see, she seems to be almost like a merfolk. Lives in the waters of northern Normandy, or up Normandy. I believe your father said when we were in London that might have met her there. Not sure.
Sounds right.
Anywhom, so yeah, she has the bottom half of like a fish some of the time. Just trying to get my.
Otherwise, that would make things very awkward.
Here it is. Okay. And she has a tendency to go after mortal men, marrying them much of the time, it seems. Particularly nobles. And she makes them promise to not watch her in the bath, what I read. And if they do, then she leaves.
Sounds slightly different than what he reported. He did not say he married her, and
No,
he
I
is
know.
not a noble. He is well off, but there's a difference.
Yeah, some say she is the daughter of a fairy and a former king of Scotland. I don't know why she's down in Normandy then, but yeah, from what I've read, most of the stories include her marrying a nobleman after he makes the oath. He always ends up breaking it, and she always ends up leaving.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I suppose that's why those other Fae were calling her a watery tart, or whatever they were saying. Maybe she has a reputation among them.
Yes, perhaps. Whereas you apparently have a much better reputation. You have much more lineage. Prince.
Yes, that is what they called me, wasn't it? I've been
Fair warning, if we travel far afield, it's likely the local Fae will not recognize either of us.
yes,
Which may be a benefit.
from what my mother said, my parent, she said that the Nordic Fae tend to be violent. What she said, more so than regular Fae, I guess.
You know that when we plant that sickle, we may actually be able to draw one for us.
Yes, I do. I do wish when Micah gets back, we should tell him about our expedition there.
Micah walks in with food and drink.
Micah, we have to tell you how last year went. You remember that trip to the boar hunt?
Oh, yeah, I was busy at the time.
Studying.
Yeah. I was actually enjoying a book for once. Food-wise, whatever's available, Nathan. I have no idea, food-wise. Just
all the food.
More food.
I'll just make a bit of a roll then.
You find breadcrumbs. All the good food was taken.
Okay. Right, I need you to make me a roll.
Okay.
If you have a personality trait such as courage or bravery, you can add that.
I do not. Okay.
He's scared of fish, obviously.
Oh no.
9 I rolled.
Okay. Right. So John's character returns with some bacon off a suckling pig, which has been cooked. Okay. Right, you are immediately gripped by an overwhelming sense of fear.
Okay.
You were able to constrain yourself, so you don't go flee out the room, but you're still hit with a wave of fear towards that bacon.
Towards the bacon? Oh, okay. So I stand up very quickly.
You can
like, yeah.
He clearly looks on his face. He clearly looks terrified.
Yeah. I'm looking at the food,
Yeah.
looking scared.
What's wrong with this?
I'm not sure. Can I make
I'm just
some
gonna
type of
look at
roll
him.
to try and figure out why this might be happening? I mean, I can infer. But...
You're welcome to move fair.
Okay. I kind of look
All right.
at...
Did you cast any unusual magic upon yourself? Are you carrying anything enchanted?
say, no, but... I don't know, it seems to be... It's reminding me a bit of maybe a fae we met last year. Maybe that might be causing this.
Are
What?
there tusks?
Well, I've kept the tusks on me. Not on me, but in my, like, you know... they're
So
in
you don't
my
have them
possession.
on you right now.
Would I have kept that? I doubt I would have kept them
I'm
on me at all.
assuming they're not on you right now. You're not wearing
Yeah,
it in times. That would be
Yeah.
strange.
Yeah, that would be very strange. Okay, yeah, they're back. They're back in my quarters.
Perhaps I'm going to pick up, even though I can't eat it or anything. I'm going to pick it up, a piece of it, and shake it at you just to see
What
how
do you
you
mean you
react.
can't? What do you mean you can't eat this either, Lucius? Fine, more for me. He'll take off to one end of the table and just sit down and go yoink and stand.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Okay, part of like take a step back and in absolute terror.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it quick then.
Oh my!
Don't worry, I will save you from the evil bacon.
Thank you.
I'm just gonna step out of the room for a minute, let you finish that, then we can maybe talk about why this might be happening.
Lucius,
Okay.
fill me in while I eat, please. No.
All right. So apparently, we went on the boar hunt. Before it happened, there was a bit of a party. They were having a contest for storytelling and singing and such. And one person told us a amusing little anecdote. Apparently, a knight and his valet and several others were trapped in the realm of the Fae. In the undisclosed forest, of course, which turned out to be the one we were in. Apparently, while they were there, they were forced to play a number of games with the Fae, and despite winning the games, apparently the only way to escape the realm was to give them a severed head of one of their companions. The valet offered up his head. The knight took it, cut his head off, gave it to the Fae, and then they were able to leave. They returned to their homes, only for him to find they had been gone many years and his wife had already remarried.
Yeah, that's a common trick for the Fae, isn't it?
Yes.
How does this relate to the fear of bacon?
Well, you see, we wound up there. We wound up in the forest with ourselves. We went there with he names the two grogs, the knight and the forester. We went there with them. Also, we were stuck with two of the local hunters. We came up upon a hill and suddenly noticed it was very misty, and then realized that we were in a Fey Regio already, and that the mist denoted a deeper boundary of the mist. And then we saw on a hillock some distance away a giant white stag. Apparently the White Hart, I am told. Huge creature. Antlers the size of tree limbs. It bounded away. Eventually we realized there was no way to simply leave the Regio from there, so we entered into the mists. It was all along the base of the hill, so no matter where we went, we'd be entering the Regio.
Yeah.
We went, encountered a few different things. A nude woman wearing red slippers of some kind, reclining on a large flower. She wanted us to give her a back rub.
And you actually resisted that?
I may have been slapped in the face. It worked.
Yeah.
We then left with our apologies and encountered a large garden of sorts and a large troop of fae folk who were on horseback playing with the severed head of one of the other hunters that we had seen earlier that morning.
All right. Oh.
The head was conscious and in some pain. They then told us that there would be a contest between the two Fae courts, the Court of Twilight and Court of Gloaming, and that we would have to choose who we would represent. I retrieved the head. I forgot to mention, we found a very large oak tree before we encountered them, which had the head of the valet from the legend. We talked to him and gained much information, and then I took his head. It had acorns the size of apples. Very impressive.
You took the severed head instead of these giant acorns, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I did not know if there was any reason to... We noticed that the things seemed to get a little darker when we took the head, so I was nervous about taking anything else from the tree. But at this point, I have two heads. The head of the valet and the head of one of the hunters. I put them in a sack. They are only able to answer direct questions, apparently. Then we interviewed each of the leaders of the Court of Twilight and the Court of Gloaming, each one offering us rewards if we would help them defeat the other in their games, and offering us a reward that we would be taught how to steal from the other. Our options were a spear that magically pierced through armor as if it were cheese. They were very specific. I thought about asking what kind of cheese, but I figured that would be rude. And then the other was a sickle, a golden sickle, which we did retrieve, and it is ours. A golden sickle, which, if buried under a barley field, will cause the fields to be very prosperous. And if the stones of that field are gathered and placed in the such and such a corner of a house, then a servant of the Fae will come and serve the owners of the house. We wound up siding with that particular person and got the sickle. We won in the games. It's very straightforward. Oh, and we also... Each one of these courts had over a dozen other severed heads from older points in history. One of them was a monk who believed himself to be in purgatory and had been converting the pagan heads that he was stored with. And I told him, "You are not in purgatory." He was getting on my nerves. After that, we the most prominent head of the other collection, the Court of Gloaming, was that of a hermetic apprentice of House Dene from the Schism War.
And Lucius, do you still have that head?
I did, and then I gave it to Decidius.
You gave...
The heads do not speak anymore, but I did give them the remains of the heads, which were no longer preserved. I gave
to the resident necromancer.
Indeed. He was quite grateful.
I'm not surprised you think you might be able to ask a favor from him for that.
Mm-hmm.
What did this former apprentice have to say while it still could talk?
We did not interrogate her greatly. We did not interrogate her greatly, unfortunately. There were Fae about, and it was a little bit awkward. We did not have a chance to interrogate her in details. She did confirm that she was only an apprentice and that the Schism War was ongoing. Though, of course, they did not refer to it as the Schism War.
Just the war, I guess.
Yes, and they were in the process of being wiped out. She and others had been fleeing, and her head was offered up by her party. Or either that or she simply was. Anyone who was traveling alone apparently was simply beheaded. There was no option. They were simply beheaded. But in any case, after the games were done, the nobles became distracted with their own efforts. We were allowed to steal the sickle. And then while they were busy partying, the White Hart came and led us away again, and we exited. Apparently, we did not need to offer up a severed head. The White Hart had led us to and from the location.
What? Why did the White Hart want you there and back again, I wonder?
If, according to Felicia, it was something to do with an imbalance created when apparently the knight from that legend, one of the more recent visitors to the realm, had slain, or at least beheaded, he had managed to behead their ruler, which had created an imbalance between his lieutenants. And we were there to establish a leader, since they could not decide it amongst themselves.
Fair enough.
It makes as much sense as anything else. We apparently did see his head, but did not speak to it. It was attached to a giant's beard, and we did not wish to wake him.
I'm
quite glad I missed all that.
So Pryderai walks back in and asks, so did you say everything?
Oh, I missed one part. The part that actually matters here, that brought this whole discussion up. One of the games was hunting. The Fae were hunting a wild boar. And from what Pryderai here told us, he tracked the boar down. The Fae were very, very eager to not encounter it. Literally, when he challenged the other Fae to this game, the Fae hunter that was selected from the other court explained in no uncertain terms which direction the boar was, and then walked in the opposite direction. They had no intention of completing the hunt.
So what has this boar done to you, as I look at Pry?
Well, I received its tusks, and I think...
Did you hunt it and kill it, or did it just give you up its tusks?
It gave me its tusks.
But it extracted a promise that he would eventually return the tusks at a later date. There was no specific date stated, only later.
Okay.
You must have worn out his patience.
Well, may I suggest you avoid the second feast hall this evening, because I believe there will be a hog roast in there. And if that little bit of bacon made you so terrified, I wouldn't want you to embarrass yourself walking into the hall.
Well, if this is happening, I guess I'll have to talk to Karen about it, but I can't imagine it's going to be very good for me to be scared of pork.
Not that. If you're scared of pigs and boars, wherever we go, there are many, many boars in forests, which is your... When it comes to the great outdoors...
We have a reason to... We will go and raise chickens in Norway. It's all good.
I suppose, hopefully... I guess I can try and just return it. How...
Because Sherwood Forest is a royal forest, there's many, many, many boar in there they use for game hunting.
I was originally going to see if I could just return the tusks quite a bit later, because they're apparently scared Fae. I thought they'd be of use, but if this is going to be happening, I'm going to have to find some way of returning them, I suppose.
Why don't you simply live with it? Everyone's got something they're afraid of. You're afraid of pigs.
I just realized, looking at Lucius, if you can't eat bacon, and looking at Pry, if you're scared of bacon, there's going to be no bacon on the menu in the new covenant, is there? Damn it.
Unless you are very cautious. Unless you are very cautious about bringing it in from a neighboring village. I'm not going to panic if I see you with it. I just won't eat it. As I said, we will raise chickens in the finest hermetic style.
Yes. Out of character, I assume Gregory left.
Yeah, he did.
Yes.
Yeah, he did.
Okay. Well, I'm talking more openly about Norway again. Yeah, I suddenly have no intention to go to Ireland now if what Gregory said is even half correct. It
Yeah.
I'm not
sounds
the
like
only person who
madness.
thinks I'm not the only person who thinks he was fed some of that information to tell us specifically, am I?
Maybe, perhaps. But then again, yeah, he could
I'm not
well be.
discounting its veracity.
But even if
I
half
don't
of
think
it
he
is
would.
true, I have no desire to go and live in that madness.
No, nor I.
That is
So
not
I
politics.
suppose that
Huh?
then that would mean either Sherwood Forest, or if we are fortunate enough to pull on one of those strings that leads to Norway, then perhaps Norway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Or,
believe it.
as you said, a brief stint in the Rhine and then Norway.
Hmm.
The Rhine is the heart of the Order in many ways, as it's been explained to me.
Yeah, I've never visited it.
Perhaps it might be amenable for us to arrange to travel for a year in that region as eremites. We could raise that as a possibility rather than immediately claiming a covenant. That would give us some much needed experience and perhaps broaden our contacts. And if we are able to make the right contacts while we are abroad, then we would be far less beholden to the decisions of our parents here.
I don't know. It would certainly if our hospitality is not rejected soon, I will try to write letters to Oculus Septentorales. God, that's a donkulous. Oculus. Or a cultist.
Off the top.
That.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I can't
Yes.
pronounce it. That's the name of the covenant.
I see it. Jesus Christ.
For people watching on YouTube, you can't see the chat window.
Septentrionalis.
Yeah, it's Oculus Septentrionalis, yeah. Basically, it means the Eye of the North, is what it translates to. Into
Auspicious name.
But yes, they were meant to be the doorstep to Scandinavia, but they're, instead of being a warrior covenant, as they were initially intended, they're actually a covenant of traders. I'm led to believe, led by Gerbaton.
That could actually prove very useful, though. If Julia does not approve and she is of Yerbaton, she could pull a few strings potentially.
Yes, I do. I've only glanced. So the Rhine covenants, none of them were underground. That one, caught my eye that it only allowed those with a gentle gift to have hospitality. They're not allowed to have normally gifted individuals in the city for any length of time.
That would be a problem for Prider, I hear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like I said, it would. It's not, and if more of us go than just the three of us, then yes, Talbot and Arminius obviously also would suffer. I wouldn't be able to stay there.
In the Rhine, you mean? Yes, that would be a problem.
It's just that covenant, because it is based within a city.
But it is possible we could stay at another nearby covenant and then make contact with them.
Yeah, it's in the city of Ludbrek, which I imagine is a trading city, if this is where this covenant of traders are.
Likely, yes.
I know it's on the coast. It's on the north coast of the Rhine. That's all I know. Just within the Baltic Sea, so on the eastern side of the Danes. But
Well, it sounds like we have a plan at least.
all right then. I shall see if I get letters to Oculus either via my sister, my parents, or Charles.
Do you think I should hold off on approaching Deciduous on the topic?
No, I think it'd be probably well worth a conversation at this point. As in, rumors spread. It's,
Okay.
Again.
What do you want to talk to him about?
He was going to approach him and basically discuss, like, basically he wants to sound out Deciduous, because Arminius is not active enough for us to ask, like, hey, what's your parents been telling you about this? I'm going to approach Deciduous and be like, hey, what's your stance on this? Where would you prefer to see us go? What are your priorities here? Individually.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, if you want, I can play him now, and we can play out that conversation.
Sure. I don't want to shut out the other players here because that would be very boring for them.
No,
You guys want it actually to be a group?
yeah, no,
thing?
go for it. No,
That'd be
just
fine.
just go for a conversation. Go for an
Okay.
in-character conversation.
No.
Could be interesting.
Talk to the three of you together. You've got no reason to do it privately, have you?
Not particularly, no. So we can do it as a group.
Okay, keep it right. Talk with yourself for like 2 minutes while I prep. I need to check my notes.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Feel like. So, I heard they have a specific kind of undead up there.
Really?
They're called the Draugr or something?
What are they? Vampires or?
No. They are undead, but according to the legends, they retain much of the knowledge they had in life. Very desiccated, but
They're corpses then. When you say undead.
yes,
In that regard.
yes, but exactly, they are not able to pass for the living, except maybe at great distance in the dark.
Oh, lovely. Now, remind me,
I did
Arminius,
not research much about them.
Arminius doesn't really like the necromantic arts, does he anymore? He is
No,
trying
not
to
at
steer away
all, and
from
he-
it.
No, not at all. And he tends to get very. Every time
Offended.
I've tried to have a discussion, with him about it, he gets offended. Like I'm not. He basically says, "I'm not a necromancer." And I'm like, "But you were trained by a necromancer. You should, by all rights." I was trained by a wind mage. I am a wind mage.
Yeah.
If you are trained by a necromancer, you should at least know the basics of necromancy. But he seems to have had no interest in it.
Yeah, I know I've spoken to Decidius a couple times, and he's showing disappointment in Arminius' lack of wish to like continue on that road or go through that road at all. Really.
Interesting.
Well, I
He seems
definitely can say that it would be useful to have a couple undead servants. He kind of looks around like, what?
No.
Oh, did you tell Micah about the sickle?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
which is a advantage that belongs to us as a group. That is something we can use. Wherever we go, that will be helpful. Being able to increase the prosperity of the crops and possibly draw in a Fey servant, either of those could be helpful.
I will not be having a face servant in my sanctum.
No, but if we are to establish a house near our sanctum, we would not want to give the Fae access to the Aegis itself, but we could have a house outside of it. A guest house, perhaps.
Mhm.
It is a possibility.
Yes, I'd like
There
to
is
test
no...
it,
there-
I was
Go
gonna
ahead.
say I'd like to test it out sometime before we leave, just to see how exactly it works. Maybe,
we do not know if it will work more than once.
I suppose.
I would not attempt it.
Yeah, also, they might not want us burying magical face sickles under their crop fields here.
I would definitely advise simply trying the. There's no requirement for us to use the servant portion of it. All we have to do is bury it under a field. But I would not try it here because it may only work the one time. All of its magic could be consumed upon doing it. We don't know, and because we don't know, I wouldn't attempt it. Save it until we have a field we definitely wish to improve. I mean, we're talking about a magical item that literally will improve the crop yields indefinitely, as far as we know. That is not something you waste. Now, if we have like a dozen sickles, then by all means, let's start the experimentation, but as long as we have just one.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm. He's going to sip at his drink.
Yeah.
And while we're waiting a second, I'm going to say my character actually goes to... He's not leaving, he's just like moving across the room to grab some food.
Yeah.
Okay, be right back.
Hopefully no more pork.
I'll know in the future, Bri. I'll make the most of it while we're still here.
So,
How-
oh,
Go on.
I was going to ask how is living with Talbot still quite the chore?
Yes.
Yeah.
We do not see eye to eye on most things, let's be honest. And I imagine he'll be quite vocally against any suggestion of Norway as he was in the past.
Yeah, I would think so.
Not that I care either way, to be honest, but...
Yeah. I'm a little concerned going there, throwing away the opportunity of the stuff that Voluntas might be able to give us by staying here.
My concern is, again, looking at Sherwood as the least of all evils, that puts us very much in Voluntas's backyard, almost.
Yeah.
So I don't think there'll be any questions whether we actually are beholden to our, obviously, former covenant.
Yeah.
So I think even though we've had relatively neutral run-ins with Blackthorn, not getting out from under our parents' shadow will certainly... They will probably, at least to begin with, assume we are hostile and assume that our votes will just go wherever Voluntas does. And to be honest, there could be a consequence if we don't do that. You know, if we don't support Voluntas at meetings, I don't know what Julia may choose to then remove any back-in from us and allow... And then, if we don't support Voluntas, they may not shield us from any Blackthorn reprisals. If you understand what I mean. If you know, it's not. It's politics is complex to say the least. So even if we avoided voting against Blackthorn, if then Voluntas, to punishment, withhold their support for us for a time, and Blackthorn use the opportunity to knock us down regardless, because just because we went against our parents once, they may see that as a one-off and take the opportunity to remove us regardless.
Has your parents spoken about why the feud is so bad between Voluntas and... I mean, I've never really...
No, I know a little bit of the history of Stonehenge, that basically it was prior to Voluntas's ascension as a strong summer covenant. I've been led to believe that Blackthorn politically dominated the entire tribunal, and no actual official tribunals were held because nobody wanted to turn up to actually discuss or go against Blackthorn. So they were never quorate. So every time, because the Brachio is a resident of Blackthorn, and there are Blackthorn also. I don't know exactly what they did, but the eldest member of the tribunal was disregarded, and then someone in Blackthorn got it instead. they somehow done some
I'm
politicking.
back.
So they controlled the chair and the head inquisitor, basically, of the tribunal meetings, and no one else turned up, so they weren't quorate, so nothing ever got done.
Wasn't
So-
the ex miscellaneous
Dominus Magna, yeah, the
Yes.
primus of House X-Misk was somehow voted out of actually being considered the eldest magus of the tribunal.
that's
So Blackthorn managed to succeed in that, and then they basically had full control. Nobody turned up, so nobody voted. So no votes were done, nothing, no justice was ever meted out, yada yada. But then Julia, as Voluntas came into a strong summer, Julia managed to rally the other covenants at least to stand against Blackthorn's domination of tribunal politics. So now there is at least regular meetings, but I still think they are still a dominant force. That's why obviously Julia wanted, 6 additional votes to vote her way, to put it simply. So I think that's where the bad bloods comes from. Just that Blackthorn were the dominant political force. Julia's managed to undo them somewhat, but now they want to obviously regain their utter control. Maybe, I don't know, but it's messy. It's my greatest respect for Julia to be able to accomplish that.
I mean, her house is known for political skill, I suppose.
Yeah, but trying to gather consistent votes in tribunal must be like herding cats.
Yeah.
So yeah, I do have a great respect for her, but at the same time, I think she sees every unfortunate event as Blackthorn conspiring.
Yeah, I believe that's why we went to London.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which may actually eventually blind her to one of the more subtle ploys that she may be looking at a red herring, or they may find it easy to distract her with the obvious while doing something subtle, because she's so quick to jump on all that as a Blackthorn plot. I don't know, but it's certainly concerned. And like I said, being in Sherwood, we would certainly be seen as a mere extension of Voluntas.
Yeah.
Politically. So yes, though we would get perhaps better resources, it would be politically we would just be an extension. The bandits and stuff, I'm not. That doesn't concern me.
Yeah, I'm not really concerned by the bandits either.
But yeah, it's more the political ramifications of being that in our parents' shadow, in Voluntas' shadow. Anyway, Lucius just discussing the history between Voluntas and Blackthorn, at least as far as I understand it.
Okay. We'll say there's a little bit of a scene time jump if you finish there. So the evening rolls on a couple of hours. The Aegis finishes and the Magi, they return to the party. Obviously, there's a bit of a class divide. I mean, the Magi don't go and party with the Grogs, because if nothing else, that makes the Grogs feel uncomfortable and not able to party, because obviously, this is a socially stratified society. But yeah, you can certainly ask around and put the word out and go looking, and you can find Desdorus is around. You can arrange to have a relatively discreet chat with him.
How is his name spelled, by the way?
I've
been saying it deciduous like the tree.
I call him Decidius, like Star Wars.
Darth Sidious.
How's it spelled? I'm not saying I'm right, but there we are. Decidius. Yeah, I think Decidius is.
I think it's like the tree.
Yeah. Decidius.
That's awesome. I've been saying it right. Yay.
Let's. In fact, we can even do a. Right, there we are.
So you want to take lead on this because you're friendly with him?
Yes.
Join the party, my young Sir Darlis.
Give him a respectful nod. Very much.
Yep, Sam.
said Alice.
I trust there were no issues with the. Is there a discreet way for him to refer to the Aegis? I mean, well, then again, we're around Grog, so who's going to care?
No, everything proceeds. Oh, that reminds me. He hands you all a casting token.
Thank you for the continued hospitality.
Thank you.
Well, now that you're guests here, we're happy for you to keep hold of that.
So, this is one of those situations where the normally silver-tongued Lucius is a little bit cautious because though he has interacted with Decidius decently before, this is a touchy subject and he's not sure where the wind lies. So he's just going to hesitate for a second and say, we were wondering if we might have a brief conversation with you. He's speaking in quieter tones, obviously, but not drawing attention to that. Regarding our upcoming plans.
Yeah.
We were hoping we might benefit from your wisdom and experience on this and learn your thoughts on the matter.
No,
It's like throwing teeth. No,
so Darth Sidious, that's how it's running.
Yes, this is my young apprentice. No, I'm just kidding. He's just going to say, we had been looking at a few different possible locations. First, I should ask, what are your thoughts about the location in Sherwood Forest?
My thoughts. Well, isn't young Arminius from that part of the world?
At least his
Yes.
father was. Yes.
Well, I have read the reports on it. It's curious. I am intrigued as to just why that particular oak tree has a magic ore around it. I suppose if you wanted somewhere secluded, and perhaps if you were longer term, if you think of something like the Shrouded Glade enchantment, that might be so I can see that would suit some Magi. I suppose there would be good eating on the royal game meat.
No boar, unfortunately, now. Taking a glance at Pry.
Oh,
A potential side effect from our last... you remember the the adventure we had acquiring those heads?
how unfortunate.
It's not a bad trade-off, though, given what all transpired.
Oh. I suppose you would need to know just how bad this bandit problem is. But quite possibly you simply recruit them; they become your grogs.
Quite possible.
You cure their sick. You help them a little bit. They
Answer any challenges.
they have no reason not to accept you. Do they?
Well, two of us have the gentle gift, at least. That would be helpful.
Do you have a Mentem specialist?
I am not talented in it myself. He looks over at Micah and Prider Eye.
I know a little.
I know a little as well.
Robert, I believe, was studying it, but I've not had a chance to discuss it with him in recent years.
Yeah, to simply bend the minds of their leader. You would immediately gain
Quite possible.
a powerful asset. For my part, I would recommend Wookiee Hole. The oil there seems quite strong.
He nods.
I investigated it myself. What would it be? Year and a half ago.
We have some concerns regarding the dampness of the area.
During the what?
How damp it is.
The
there
caves
for
are-
books. Yes.
Yes.
Well, I was rather thinking that the grogs your library are would be on the surface. You simply have your laboratories in the magic hall below the ground. And yes, there would be some damp issues, but surely a simple enchantment can handle damp.
Interesting
Yeah.
consideration having the majority of the Covenant above ground.
There's also the concern about its closeness to a certain other covenant.
Most servants will not want to live underground. The living beings value the daylight.
Hmm.
Do you think there is a risk that it is too close to Blackthorn?
It could be seen by them as an attempt to encroach on their territory to contest their resources, potentially. I suppose, but it is in a different country, so I think they would have a hard job making too much protest about that.
Hmm.
If Blackthorn wanted to assault your covenant, being an extra 50 miles away would not stop them.
I suppose so.
True.
I suppose we could always ask the Red Caps where the Vis sources are, if there are any registered Vis sources in that area. We'd know then relatively immediately. If they had grounds to protest our presence.
Possibly. Again, the investigative resources will have to be done regardless of where you are.
Oh,
Yes.
no, yes, I don't want to settle where this source is already claimed by another covenant. That's an unnecessary complication, it feels.
There were some petty locals living in the caves. I've already dealt with them while I was there.
You didn't happen to see the witch, did you?
No sign of it. No, I saw the reputed stalactite, which is said to have been the witch.
Mhm.
I didn't want to spend too much time probing it. You might remember when you're that man that went with you to London, who then went on a mission for me.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
That's where he was going.
Okay, the porter that went. Yeah. So I believe Lucius is one other spot to ask you about.
You're getting the look now.
Oh, while I was there was some news. What was it? Yes, only a few miles away in Glastonbury, the monks there had found the body of Arthur.
Yeah, we read that in the report.
And his queen. A pity about it got reburied with rites.
Hmm. This might sound like a strange question, but how far abroad have you traveled in your years, Deciduous? Damn it! Now I'm saying it wrong.
Oh,
It's doing good for so long.
most of my trips abroad are to attend certain gatherings of my house. I'm sure you wouldn't want to be with the details.
I presume that would be more south into the Mediterranean.
Yes.
If I might speak freely, regardless of where we go, Wookiee Hole or Sherwood, etc., I hope it would not be too forward to say that I hope we will be able to keep communication open, and I do plan on making some research into, shall we say, your area of expertise. It has, I had hoped over the last 10 years or so to learn some of it by osmosis by working alongside Arminius, but he generally seemed less than interested in that.
No. He seems more interested in plants. And, well, I'm not quite sure what he sees in them.
He is an odd man.
Well, yes. Perhaps it has not been easy for him being the youngest of you all.
Quite possible. Do you...
He is, well, he's simple in certain ways, but he has certainly some talent for what he chooses to apply his mind to. Well, I hope when he moves in with you, you'll rein in his more strange impulses. Besides,
Sorry,
every
go ahead.
every covenant can benefit from a good Veritius.
Out of character, what did he say? Every covenant can benefit from a...
Viditius, his house. One of his house.
Yes.
Saying.
Sorry, I couldn't understand the last word. My bad.
Right.
And what are your thoughts of the possibility of covenants more far abroad?
I would not suggest that you move closer towards the centre of the Order's power. Those areas tend to be, shall we say, already taken and overpopulated. Moving the other way, I can see has potential for an adventurous young group.
We had a very interesting conversation with Gregory about that not long ago. It was very enlightening and made it clear just how adventurous we would have to be. And I believe we felt we might be a little short.
To travel west, but not...
Every tribunal has its own peculiarities, its own customs.
What about
True.
lands that don't generally fall into tribunals?
I'm going to look confused at that.
Point.
You're not speaking of that land across the ocean that one mariner mentioned.
No, there are lands in the north that generally are, for all practical purposes, not part of a tribunal. There are lands to the south, past the Mediterranean. The same.
Yes, well, beyond, the lands in Egypt and beyond. Or indeed, you could follow the Silk Road east.
Either of those would be very far afield.
And apparently, who can say what we might encounter once you start to stray from the maps?
Yes.
I
a
have
little bit.
with King Priester John.
I know that is
Could
something
be
to
interesting.
do with far south, but I don't know anything more than that.
Some say to the south, some say to the east.
Generally, they all agree that it's very far away.
Yes. And
I was thinking a little more chillier climates.
I think of the frozen north.
Mm.
I've heard that. Well, we've all heard the stories. They say there is a. But
The Order of Odin.
yes, Bane of the Tremere, if you want to believe the tales.
That one I've not heard.
Well, they're one of the possibilities as to who caused the Great Sundering. For those of you who are not so learned in the history, Tremere was the last of the founders, and his house came to dominate the order. It looked like he would be declared overlord of the order, and then some unknown force broke the minds of all his lieutenants. It's one of the stories. It may have been the Order of Odin.
I haven't read that one yet.
If that is true, that would be, well, the Tremere, as you know, are Mentum specialists. So to achieve what happened would be remarkable.
Indeed. I've also heard there, at the very least, one could surmise that there would be a lack of competition from hermetics in that region.
Certainly.
That is to say nothing of competition with the locals, however. There could be hedge mages around every corner.
Yes, and we don't know how organised they are. We don't know how powerful they are. But I was thinking on this. Obviously, this has been talked about for years now. We know there are rune casters, so the stories go. Oh, are there not also Saxon rune casters here in England? The alphabet is a little different. Perhaps you should investigate the rune casters in England to give you some clues to the rune casters you might find there.
It's possible that they might have some valuable insight.
Well, in any case, to know what the magic is capable of, to know how fast it is, to know what it can and cannot do, to know how if they can penetrate a decent palmer. These are valuable things to know.
Indeed.
A decent palm is a valuable thing to know.
That's something we would all wish to pursue. Just going to think for a minute. Oh, I did hear in my brief research of the region that there is some very particular kind of undead up there, different from the sorts that we hear about down here. That in itself is not surprising. Every region has their own, but these creatures superficially look much like we would describe a walking corpse here. But there's, according to the rumors I read, still retain their intelligence from their life, or aspects of it at least. That could make them very useful servants and subject of much interest. Of course, there might be penalties and issues with that, assuming there's any truth to the rumor at all.
Certainly. There are stories of undead created by curses up there and such like. And I would be interested to know to what extent their magical traditions can interface with the undead. Do they create them? Can they control them? Can they fight them?
All of which would be very interesting to know, and could even discovering a portion of that information could be quite useful.
In recognition of your gift, if that is truly what you want, I would be happy to argue in favour of Voluntas supporting your expedition. that does not mean it would pass, but I personally would be happy to support it if that is what you decide.
That is a very generous offer.
I will do my best to argue for continued support. I would expect in return continued updates of what you may learn there, and appropriate gifts of similar nature.
Of course. No matter where we go, as I said, no matter where we wind up going, I would plan on maintaining contact and exchanging information for the betterment of both our research. I am but a novice, obviously, in comparison, but I can aspire. And obviously, I have quite a bit of ground to cover when it comes to Corpus.
Corpus is a when the prime forms is used it is used to sustain us in this world. After all, you won't get very far in this world without a corpus.
I'm just going to kind of look at the others like the unspoken word. That's it. We're all becoming necromancers.
Michael will
Just
nod.
kidding.
He perfectly respects that wisdom of Corpus. I will thank you, Decidius, for a very insightful conversation.
Yes, thank you.
So let us assume for a moment that you have picked a location. So presumably you travel there with some supplies and some roles, perhaps some temporarily, perhaps some permanently. Yeah, and I might expect you will need to construct some buildings, I would think.
Simple ones at first, but yes.
Good waterproof buildings for your labs and library.
Yes.
At the very least.
There was some... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you just looking thoughtful. Well, carry on.
Oh, sorry. There was... He looks over towards Micah. There was some discussion. Apparently, we would not be the first to plan on something like this. And in fact, there might be at least one covenant in the Rhine that would be... Their interests would align in this. And it is possible that we might be able to get some basic information from them. They may have already... I'm not saying they would give us some of the sites they have already uncovered, but if we plan on going, perhaps they would let us know a few of the options up there. After all, if we succeed, it makes it easier for their attempt to succeed in the future.
Perhaps. Or perhaps they might see you as rivals.
Either is possible.
Only one can be first, after all.
That is true.
But when it comes to going back to the city's earlier point, when it comes to creating buildings from nothing, I think that is beyond all of our magics currently. The amount of whiz that would have to be consumed by that is prohibitive anyway.
I think you are.
So we would have to do it the Monday anyway. Sorry, go ahead.
You must think it to you directly. Yes, I pity your masters have not discussed these things with you. How can we... What would be a good analogy to explain this? Suppose you wish to eat a good broth. Now, if you were to conjure that, it would not nourish you, unless you use yeast, which would be a waste. But you understand so far?
Yes.
What could you do with magic, which would help you acquire this broth?
Compel a cook to cook it for you, to conjure valuables, even temporarily, and pay a cook to prepare it for you.
Yes, that would work. You could directly compare a cook with Mentem. You could pass false coins to them, though the quest will take a dim view of that. So I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't want to rely on that. Let us suppose there were no humans around.
Well, the art of Rigo can make permanent things, can it?
Can what?
Using Rigo can. Oh, sorry, one sec. Rigo can manipulate things, and it is permanent, right?
Yes.
So you could use Rigo to help you cook it yourself.
Then you have to be talented enough to do the thing you're trying to craft with Rigo.
But you could, for example, you could conjure a pot, and that would be temporary, but that wouldn't matter. You could fill it with real water, but you could then heat the water using a little ignum. Equally, you could trivially attract and slaughter an animal for food. And so the process of creating a broth for you would be quicker than it would be for mundane. You would not need the firewood. You would not need a proper cooking pot. Now, to come back to the original topic, yes, you would not want to conjure a house. That would be difficult and expensive and require some craftsmanship. But you could gather mundanes and compel them to work. You could pass them false coin and then kill them afterwards. You could conjure tools for them to use. You could enchant tools to make them particularly sharp, or to make things easy to lift. You could even, with insight, do some more crafty things. You could reduce things in size so they can be easily carried. Or, when I want fine craftsmanship, I make things bigger, let the craftsmen do their work, and then they shrink back down. And the detail is preserved. With creativity and insight, you can use the arts to make lives a lot easier for your servants. We Ritius understand these things. It's what we do. We make tools which empower and enable our servants to act effectively.
Mike will just give a nod.
Have I made my point clear?
Yes.
Yep.
The other option, which I might be able to assist you with, even if you're not quite there yet yourselves, would be to supply some workers to help with the construction. Ones that won't get tired.
Give a faint smile and a nod at that. Cool. Out of character, I don't really have anything more to add.
So, there are these. Once you pick location, fleshing out these small details, how you can overcome these, make their lives easier in lots of small, subtle ways. You will find that pays dividends in the long run. Make your crops grow well. Make your herds grow well. That is wealth. That is power. Some houses tend to be a little too blunt and direct about things. Perhaps that is a failing that has been passed on to some of you. I don't know. But still, I'll leave you to it, gentlemen.
Give him a respectful nod.
Pleased after all these years to have watched you all grow up and to now be able to call you Sodalis. Oh! Those mirrors came in very useful. Thank you.
Nods.
It was fortunate I asked for 3, all things considered. Given your gift, Lucius. Please, gentlemen.
He nods. I would not have been able to acquire it without the help of my Sadalos here.
Okay. Do you want to finish there, or do you want to say anything else?
Quite happy to finish there.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Great. Thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. It's been a more relaxed social episode of our ongoing saga.